Welcome to the Whistles. I'm your host, Joe Chap, and today we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions because Albert Breer was at Detroit Lions training camp, and I know that we go with the Pride of Detroit, or some people that were at training camp, like John from Lions Lowdown. But what he's got the chance to do was talk to Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and Jared Goff. And one thing that became abundantly clear when he was talking to them, from what he was saying, is that there was a smooth operation the way the Detroit Lions are running their training camp. It's very fluid, it's very smooth, and they haven't repeated many plays. Now, the one thing that he talked about that I really want to talk about is how smart both rookies have been with Brian Branch, with Jahmyr Gibbs. And we both have high hopes for Jahmyr Gibbs and Brian Branch. And we hope that they can be really good players to start out. And obviously, Chauncey Gardner Johnson being in that hybrid safety role, Brian Branch would probably be the second one. And then Will Harris, from all things I've read today, Will Harris was taking snaps at the third hybrid safety spot for the Detroit Lions defense. So that's something to monitor. But when you look at this team, and you look at Jahmyr Gibbs and the way he's progressing, you look at the way Sam Laporta is progressing. You heard Ben Johnson talking about Sam Laporta today and how he's getting the offense and he's impressing the coaches. This is what you like to hear. And the Detroit Lions look like they can definitely be a contender this year. And from my perspective, you know, going out and trying to get Teddy Bridgewater could be a complete sign that they are trying to go all in. You know, you don't sign a Teddy Bridgewater if you just think that you're just a middle of the pack team. So that was something I kind of wanted to reiterate because I didn't get the chance to reiterate that last yet in the last video because I didn't do a video yesterday. But Chauncey Gardner Johnson was out today. Practice Jameson Williams is out still. Brian Branch wasn't practicing today. So Will Harris took third. He took third hybrid safety snaps. And the one thing that you have to understand is like, look, what the Detroit Lions are doing from their pragmatic approach and the way that they're building this camp out. You like what you see from the hybrid safety spot because I know a lot of people don't like the Will Harris being in the hybrid safety spot, but that's what he was originally drafted to be. But if he's your third hybrid safety, that's very, very good. So the attendance and injury, obviously Marvin Jones, Emmanuel Mosley, and Hendon Hooker on the NFI. Gardner Johnson, Jameson Williams also missed practice, and we're working with trainers. New additions to the injury report include Vaitai, who was injured late on Tuesday, and hybrid defensive back Brian Branch. Branch did not appear to suffer an injury the day prior, so it's unclear why he was out. We likely won't get an update till status until Friday morning's Dan Campbell press conference, so that'll be interesting to note. Um, so there's some injuries starting to progress, and obviously we want to know what's happening with Brian Branch. And look, I'm glad that the Detroit Lions made a move to solidify the right guard spot because of Vaitai. Vaitai has not stayed healthy since he's been here. So the fact that the Detroit Lions had to make a move to get Graham Glasgow to fill in the role if Vaitai can't stay healthy, that's something that you definitely have to monitor from the Detroit Lions standpoint because that right guard spot was when you were watching it last year and you seen Coyote Yoshika in there against Ed Oliver, it was very, very apparent that the Detroit Lions were mismatched on that right guard spot. So if you can get an NFL pro in that right guard spot on a depth wise, and then maybe if Coyote Yoshika has to come in, that could work well. But if Evan Brown wasn't cutting it, Oshika wasn't covering it. You had Skipper in there for a few games. It's just something you have to see. But on the Pride of Detroit website, they're talking about the instant results. With the offense no longer working in the red zone, a situation that favors the offense in training camp, the defense used the opportunity to get more aggressive on Wednesday, and the results were instant. Hutchinson jumped out of the gate with a sack, a tackle for a loss on the first team practice, beating tight ends Brock Wright and Sam Laporta with power and agility. Charles Harris, which is someone I think people are forgetting. Charles Harris might be the most important person on this defense this year because we all know what James Houston can do. We all know what Aiden Hutchinson can do. But Charles Harris coming back, and if he could be the same guy he was before his injury, that could be absolutely huge. So going on, Charles Harris likely had a sack after a slick outside move on Taylor Decker, which if you're beating Taylor Decker, that shows you everything that you need to know. Romeo Core also got And on the fun later in the day, dispatching the Lions' third string offensive tackles for his own sack. James Houston was also primed for a big day, but was aggressively held. This is from Pride of Detroit. But it wasn't only sacks and tackles for a loss. Isaiah Buggs, Broderick Martin, and Benito Jones all knocked down passes at the line of scrimmage. I can't emphasize this enough. When you have a defense that can knock down passes at the line of scrimmage, first of all, it helps your linebackers. It helps the secondary because you're knocking down passes. And if you have big guys who can get their hands up and make the play necessary to win the game, that's huge for the Detroit Lions. So moving on. This is expanding role. So Jack Campbell got more snaps with the first team. That's very, very great things to hear. Derek Barnes, on the other hand, was shifting back to the twos when the rookie moved up. Barnes once again had a pretty solid day, but his biggest gaffe came in the final practice session when he slipped and fell in coverage and gave up a big play. He said, "The worry is not I'm going to start. If I'm going to play. The worry is getting better and continuing to help myself grow and find happiness and comfort in myself. Competing and doing the best I can do come by itself. I try so hard not to focus on starting and not starting because when I do, I can tell them a difference in my game. It takes away from a little bit of my happiness when I do because I'm focusing on the wrong thing." I think that's important because a lot of these linebackers, they're so interchangeable. And if you want to become a legitimate player, sometimes you have to look at your role and be like, look, I know in certain situations this player is better than me, but it takes a real person to admit to themselves, to their team, that it's great to be part of it. You just want to do what's best for the team. And I think what Derek Barnes is saying, a lot of young people, they don't understand that. They don't understand that sometimes you have to take a step back, even when you're not starting. Sometimes you have to take the step back and say, what's best for the team? What can help me and what can help our team? And that's the main thing. Going on, obviously the offense had a pretty lousy day. It's a good thing because obviously we heard the defense got burned the shit yesterday. So the defense coming back shows me that they had a lot of grit and they wanted to make sure that they were going to come back and make the plays necessary to be better today. Um, Obviously injury replacements. I talked about this earlier. Will Harris was starting at the hybrid safety nickel spot. Chase Lucas was on second team, as mentioned earlier. Harris got a pass breakup late in practice. Lucas would be sacked for the second day in a row. With Harris shifting inside, the Lions utilize a four cornerback rotation on the second team opposite Starling Thomas, Jaron Williams, and Stephen Gilmore. Got more time on Tuesday. Khalil Dorsey was first up Wednesday. Obviously we talked about the offense being subdued. Special teams. We're gonna get a lot. We're gonna learn a lot more about the special teams going into the preseason games because I always tell people, it's easy to kick in practice, very easy to kick in practice, but the main thing is kicking and making things happen in the preseason games. And Riley Patterson, John Parker Romo. If I was Dan Campbell, and I'm not Dan Campbell, so let's just get that out of the way. But if I'm Dan Campbell, I am getting my kickers in every possible situation that they could possibly get to during these preseason games because it's absolutely a huge thing for the Detroit Lions to nail down which kicker is going to be the kicker for the Detroit Lions that's moving forward. So tomorrow the pads come on. We're gonna hear more popping. We're hear more. Just hits. Let's go. Let's do it. Finally, you get from no pads to pads. And if you played football at any point in your life, the pads coming on is the greatest day in the history of the world. You love the pads coming on. So the fact that the pads are coming on tomorrow, that's going to heighten the intensity levels for that practice, and it's going to be great for the Detroit Lions to have that hyper intensity because they all get intense, and that's pretty much predicated by their head coach Dan Campbell. Detroit Lions training camp day 4. Your observations. I'm gonna have a video later, probably tomorrow morning, that you can chew on before practice. But in the meantime, subscribe to the channel, like this video, We'll keep you entertained with all the Detroit Lions content moving forward. So please help us out and get us to where we want to go. We will see you in the next video. I'm Joe Chap of Detroit Lions News and Between the Whistles Detroit, and I will see you in the next video.